Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 649. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. How's it going, James?
It's going great. It's going awesome. It's good to be here with you, Kyle.
Yeah, yep. Just behind the curtain, we recorded for about 5 minutes, and then my recording went crap. So sorry, you cannot learn more about James's bathroom remodel. If you want to hear more,
we'll have
maybe
to save
he'll
it
post
for
something.
Another day.
Right, yeah, maybe when he's all done, we can catch up on the state of the bathroom and all the crowbars and everything.
Absolutely.
I'm sure everyone's really sad that they missed out on us talking crowbars.
Hey, I mean, the big question is a $5 Amazon crowbar worth the money? We'll find out.
Tune in next week to find out the answer.
Welcome to the podcast, Zach. We are Zachless this week.
Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back.
He should be back next week. Maybe. I don't know.
Probably
next week.
Probably, yeah.
We'll see. He was off in Utah, just hanging out with the wifey who had something to do there. He was tagging along, from my understanding.
Some conference or something, yes.
Yep, but he should be back next week. Also, he just doesn't like Tim Burton movies, so I don't think there was much motivation to make this one happen in a movie theater.
No, I mean, I can say right now, you suggested that we do our top 10 Tim Burton movies as our list, and I really think we have to make Zach do that list.
At some point.
Yeah, I don't think we can let Zach get out of. So that's why we're not doing top 10 Tim Burton movies this week.
I mean, he kind of can't make that list without seeing Beetlejuice.
No, he's just top 10 Tim Burton movies. I'm sure he's seen 10.
I'm just saying, if he hasn't seen Beetlejuice, it's not a valid list, in my opinion. Like, you can't make a top 10 Tim Burton movies and not have seen Beetlejuice.
I completely disagree. You're making the top 10, a list of the top 10 Tim Burton movies you've seen in the moment. In the moment, if Beetlejuice isn't one of them, then it's on the list.
I'm saying you haven't given the list, like, it's fair consideration if you haven't seen what is considered one of his best movies. Like, what's the point of even making the list if you haven't seen, like a lot of people, this is their favorite Tim Burton movie.
Right. I think the point is to make Zach rank a director he hates.
Right, but he needs to see Beetlejuice because that's like one that he might actually like. Like, I know he likes a couple of Tim Burton movies.
Right.
Pretty sure Beetlejuice will be one of those, just because it's one of those movies that, like, even people that don't like Tim Burton like Beetlejuice.
I don't know if I like Beetlejuice.
Well, a lot of people like Beetlejuice, clearly, like by the box office alone of this sequel. Clearly, a lot of people have come to love Beetlejuice over the last 30 years.
If we were smart, we've done a whole say Beetlejuice 3 times gag, because we've said it more than 3 times already.
Right, but we're not smart. This is the second time we've tried to record this episode, Kyle.
That's right. That's a good point. We should have done that. We should have said we can only say the word Beetlejuice twice in the entire episode, considering the movie we're seeing is called Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and you can't say it again. You can't say it for your list.
I guess we would say Beetlejuice instead.
Beetlejuice, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the movies, they always use the spelling of Beetlejuice.
Well, yeah, so I like in the first movie, he needs to get Winona Ryder to guess how to say his name, because she says, like, Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this movie, again, it's printed, again, the correct spelling of, Beetlejuice. And right away, what's her name? Says
Catherine O'Hara?
Beetlejuice. Yeah, no, not Catherine O'Hara, the new one.
Oh, yeah. What's her name?
Jenna Ortega.
Yeah.
I mean, again, maybe she's better educated than what Winona Ryder's character was in the late 80s, but she's like, oh yeah, Beetlejuice. Like,
yeah, the wild thing too. Well, we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
We'll talk about the movie. But speaking of which, we're here to talk about the movie Beetlejuice, and we're also going to rank our top 10 Michael Keaton movies. I feel like now that we're in the middle of this, that we've actually done this before. Maybe pre you being a full-fledged member of the podcast, but
did
now,
you? Oh, really?
I did not do this search. I'm going to do it right now to see.
I mean,
we're doing it one way or another.
Right, it's happening.
Right.
My guess is if you did it, it's for Birdman, which is like early in the podcast. Cause I think that came out 2014, the same year the podcast was started.
Right. We have never done it,
Oh, okay. Never ranked Michael Keaton.
as best I can tell. So
Okay.
that's good news. Although it would have been fun to do it and then compare my list to the old one. But
Right.
all right.
See if any post Birdman movies made your Michael Keaton list.
Right. So yeah, we're talking Beetlejuice, and we're also going to rank our top 10 films of Michael Keaton. Before we do all that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. 5 stars only. You could also send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things. And we will discuss it on a future episode. Also, just to rewind a little bit to the Patreon, if you're a Patreon supporter and you listen to the after show on a regular basis, the feed for the after show will be moving. If you would like to move to where the feed is going to be in the future, you should do that right now. You can do that by logging into Patreon and follow their directions to get the podcast feed. If you need any help with that, email me, james@cinereelist.com. I'd be happy to help you out. Ready to talk Beetlejuice?
I am ready to do this.
All right. Beetlejuice is in theaters now. We're going to talk about it right after this clip.
Jesus, bub. Can't you see I'm concentrating here? You know what? Long-distance relationships can be difficult, especially when one of you is dead and the other's ignoring it for 30 years. But Lydia and I, we have a definite psychic connection. And I'll tell you something, she definitely saw me that last time. I feel a little tingle.
That was Beetlejuice, a 2024 American dark fantasy comedy film directed by Tim Burton. The movie stars Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, Jenna Ortega, Justin Theroux, Monica Bellucci, Monica Bellucci,
Chiwetel Ejiofor,
and Willem Dafoe.
It's one of the easier names to say on this list.
The official IMDb synopsis for Beetlejuice is: after a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter, Astrid, accidentally opens the portal to the afterlife. Kyle, as somebody who is not sure he likes Beetlejuice, what did you think of Beetlejuice?
Well, let me get some context to that statement first.
Okay.
So Beetlejuice, the original, was a movie that I saw multiple times as a kid, right? Being that I think I was 5 when it came out. So definitely was a VHS rental staple.
Sure.
And there was like a cartoon in the 90s also.
Absolutely.
Remember that? Right. So like I was definitely into Beetlejuice when I was younger. And I hadn't really touched it since the early 90s. And we watched it, I don't know, maybe a year ago. I think I might mention this on the podcast. We watched it about a year ago with my son, maybe even sooner than that. And I wasn't surprised by the movie. Everything was there that I expected it to be, except there's not a lot of Beetlejuice in Beetlejuice.
In the first Beetlejuice.
In the first movie, correct. And I kind of found myself missing Michael Keaton because I think in my mind, I remembered him being so much more of that movie. And when he's in that movie, it's great. I think it's, well, we're going to rank Michael Keaton roles. It's an incredible role. And only he can do it that well. But there's just a lot of like Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin running around and trying to talk to Winona Ryder, and Catherine Harris being funny. A lot of Jeffrey Jones, which we'll talk about that also. Because if you're not sure what Jeffrey Jones is up to these days, you can just go Google that name, and there's a reason I haven't seen him for like 20 years as a actor. So as much as I like enjoyed watching Beetlejuice again, I don't know if it's a good movie, if that makes sense.
The original movie.
The original.
Okay.
Like I think it's a bunch of great moments and a bunch of memorable moments, but I don't know if it adds up to like an actual overall positive viewing experience.
Do you want me to disagree with you? Because I definitely do.
Please, we can get into that right now. Yeah,
Sure. I mean, as someone who has lived with Beetlejuice for your entire life, I would say, right?
Yeah,
has lived in a Beetlejuice world.
yeah.
I could understand why you maybe don't prefer the path of that movie that leads you to the Beetlejuice himself.
Correct. Yes.
But I would submit that a full movie, a 2-hour movie, or maybe even an hour and 40-minute movie of solid Beetlejuice with no human characters to lead you down the path, you wouldn't like Beetlejuice anymore. He's obnoxious and annoying by design.
Yeah.
And so if you don't care about any of the human, quote unquote, human characters compared to Beetlejuice, then by the time he's on the screen, what are you left with? Just an annoying guy who screams a lot and like is gross, basically. And maybe some people would enjoy that, but I don't think there would be much mass appeal for that. I think the original movie is like the perfect balance between fish out of water type stuff that leads into just craziness towards the back half with Beetlejuice.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're on this journey with these people that are, by all accounts, genuinely good people who got into a car accident and died. Spoilers for the original Beetlejuice.
It happens in the first scene of the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like how these good people who are now in some kind of purgatory are going to have to figure out like how to be ghosts and how to be mean when they're not mean people, how to scare people when they don't really even want to scare people. They just don't want them to ruin their house, basically. Those are the stakes in the first movie. And without those characters, I don't think Beetlejuice as a character is near as effective or fun. He would just be annoying to me. And so, yeah, I disagree. I think that's why I think a Beetlejuice movie with tons of Beetlejuice would not be near as popular as the original film has been able to be for so long.
Because you just think it would just be too much Beetlejuice, too much over the topness, and it would lose its effectiveness after a while.
I like the journey.
Oversaturation.
I like the journey of two good-hearted people having to navigate being ghosts and going through the levels of weirdness that they go through over time, culminating in Beetlejuice. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go from 0 to 60. It goes from 0 to 15 to 25
right
to 30. You know what I mean? It's like a slow build until you're in a waiting room with a bunch of dead people. You know what I mean? And there's like a couple other wacky things that happen. And then Beetlejuice is in the movie. I like that formula. With the new movie, they kind of try to, it's not the exact same formula, but they tried to have like normal people characters and limit Beetlejuice again until halfway through the movie.
Right. There's definitely more Beetlejuice in this movie than the first one. But he's he's not omnipresent through the whole thing. No, and he's not the main character. Right. He definitely is still a supporting character, even though his name is in the title, which is very interesting. I think once again with this movie, I'm just more interested in the underworld or the afterlife stuff. Like when they're in the waiting rooms, or like Beetlejuice has his own like office space is the best way to put it, with all the shrunken head guys who live there. Or the crazy corridors. That to me, that's all fun. I enjoy that part of these movies. I guess I just don't really care about the human parts that much. Catherine O'Hara was the exception. I thought, even though she has her own little journey going on, she's funny. Her presence is funny. Her line readings are funny. I think at one point she makes a moose joke when like someone's like coughing or something like that. And I was just like, okay, Catherine O'Hara, you can say anything and make it sound funny.
Sure.
Right. Jenna Ortega makes sense being in this movie because she is like the new young It's goth girl. Like she's in Scream and she was Wednesday. I don't think she really added she didn't hurt the movie, but I don't feel like she added anything to the movie.
She added box office.
Exactly. A current name. Yeah. And I don't know how I felt about Winona Ryder's character kind of being like the same person she was 30 years ago. just now in the adult form.
Yeah, I mean, probably the character I was most disappointed with was Winona Ryder's character. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
you watch the original movie and like she's not the funny part of that movie. She's the straight man in a weird way, even though she's the goth girl. She's the straight man of the original movie. And so they tried to make her the straight man in this one as well, but now you've also got Jenna Ortega, who's like also a straight man in this movie, straight woman, whatever you want to call him.
No, I think you use straight man as a gender neutral term in this case. Yeah.
Sure. And so now you have two people who are like the straight men in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, like what are we doing? Like, I don't know. It was nice to see Winona Ryder on screen again, but you probably could have done the same thing you did with the dad and just made it, she's not in the movie for some reason or another. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Catherine O'Hara is tasked with taking care of Jenna Ortega. You know
like
what I mean? You got
granddaughter,
this
for whatever
huge,
reason.
right?
Yeah.
This huge generation gap, and you could have told a similar story and just had one straight man to worry about. Then you could have cut out all the love interest stuff with the other guy that was
the Justin Theroux stuff.
Not funny.
That drag that moved this movie to a halt. Like
For sure.
he's doing a bit, right? Like he's playing a character who I expect to be a parody of like a movie in the 90s. Like he just like his character seems so out of place because he's like this new age producer who you feel like he's into yoga. He's got the ponytail. He wears scarves. I'm like, this is like a 90s parody character. What is he doing in this movie in 2024? I don't understand.
Sure. Well, he fits in very nicely with like the motley crew of New York weirdos that was in the original Beetlejuice. So I understand the legacy and why he's there. I just wasn't buying his relationship or even his deviousness towards Winona Ryder. And they leaned on that a lot to push the real world story. And I was just kind of like, I don't understand why this is here. Other than, I guess, to like give you that New York weirdo vibe. But you were getting enough of it from Catherine O'Hara that it was fine.
Right. Yeah, she was totally fine. Well, this movie being a sequel / reboot / reheat, whatever you want to call it, like it's trying to hit some of the same beats. So like we need a wedding again, just like we have in the first one. We need a karaoke moment where everything gets crazy. And like the Deo moment in Beetlejuice, classic, hilarious. Love that moment. MacArthur Park, spoiler alert, let's tell you what the song is right now. I don't know if that worked for me. Like it just seemed very long after a while. Like the song itself is a very long song. And that whole sequence is like, okay, we're doing all of MacArthur Park here for this sequence.
Sure. Yeah, they kind of burned Daylight Come for the funeral.
Yes, they used it there. Yep.
Yeah. This movie's been long. Like they greenlit a sequel right after the original.
Right. I remember hearing it's supposed to be another podcast was saying it's supposed to be like Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii or something like that.
Right. There's been Beetlejuice Goes to Hawaii. There's been just like 5 different variations of different things in the works. And this is what they ended up with. But the reason why they didn't do it in the past is they constantly said like, we're not going to do it unless there's a story that's worthy of telling. And I enjoyed my time with Beetlejuice, but I'm not sure there's a story worthy of telling here.
I kind of agree because like Beetlejuice hasn't grown. Like he's not a character that is going to change
or should.
Right. He's supposed to be a demon, a spirit who is always up to mischievous. Like I don't want to see him have a change of heart.
Right.
But
though also I didn't care what Lydia, like I didn't care how she's grown.
Exactly.
Or how she gets through this. Like I don't care.
Yeah. Right. Like what is the story here? Because it kind of is Beetlejuice again. There's also a bunch of like side plots. Like you have Monica Bellucci as like his ex-wife. And I mean, she's kind of like at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. And there's a long stretch where we don't know what she's up to whatsoever.
While I was watching it, I didn't feel like it in her intro scene, but when they brought her back later on through the movie, I was like,
Yeah.
this only exists to give Beetlejuice something to do.
Right. When like the humans have their own action going up.
Like to the bigger plot, it meant nothing.
No, because she showed up briefly and gets dispatched.
Right.
Spoiler alert. Sorry. I was just going to say it right there.
You kind of don't even see her until the end. Like here and there, she's, found in the halls of the underworld or whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, she's absent from the movie until the very last scene. And then like, there's not any, I guess there's a big climactic moment, but not really.
Same for the Jenna Ortega and the boy she meets.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing where it seems to be building to something, and that gets very quickly resolved also.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So it feels like a lot of things are happening. There's a lot of plots going on, but it's just to get us to the same point where we can have like the big Beetlejuice moment.
Right. And I'm not sure any of that made as much sense as the original premise of the original, which was like people died and now opposites from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like big city people had moved into their house and they need to get them to move out. That's a pretty simple premise.
Right. It's like
not too many side travelings or side stories to it at all.
Well, it all takes place in the house. It's either in the house or in the underworld. Those are the only two settings of the original Beetlejuice.
And in this one, it felt like they didn't have a core story, so they just wrote a bunch of little side stories.
Exactly. Yes.
And it was fine. Like I said, I enjoyed myself. I'm glad they finally made a sequel. I'm not mad at this movie, but it also feels like after 3 decades of we're not going to do this until there's a story worth telling. It felt very much like that's not the reason you made this movie, because I don't see a story worth telling on screen.
No, I think it's Cha-Ching is the reason they made this movie.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a mixture of that, and I think Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, Tim Burton, they all want to make another Beetlejuice movie. They've wanted to make it for a long, long time. And after 30 years, you probably just settle for, okay, this is good enough. Time to go. You know what I mean? Like, we've been through this. If we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it? Like, none of them are getting younger.
All those names are still relevant. Like, I would say
I'm
maybe
not sure Catherine O'Hara is relevant.
Oh no, I disagree. Like after Schitt's Creek, she has. I think like Schitt's Creek introduced her to a whole new generation.
I never watched that show. I didn't even know she was in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, like it was her and Eugene Levy, and I think their careers are probably kind of doing this, and then they did Schitt's Creek, and that became like a big Netflix, whatever streaming show. Sure. And I think a whole new generation of people got introduced to their style of comedy. So like Catherine O'Hara is sort of, again, she's not like #1 comedy actress in the world, but like she's definitely relevant again. Winona Ryder's got Stranger Things, that got her back in there. Michael Keaton's never really quite gone away.
I mean, he went away from like the popular, popular landscape. You know what I mean? He was still making
movie, and
sure, but even those are like, there was a time between like 2003 and like 2015 that like nobody saw him.
That's good.
Then like 2014, 2015, you got like The Founder, Birdman, Spotlight. Like there were a couple in a row that brought him back. I don't remember when Spider-Man was, but it's got to be around that time.
2016. It's around the same time. Yeah.
It's all happened within a year or two where he was leaving kind of movie purgatory.
Right.
A few years before that, he was the funny guy in The Other Guys. You know what I mean? He was the police captain. The movie didn't revolve around him, but every time he had a line, it was good.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, right. He's definitely the best part of that movie, which we'll discuss later. So. Sure. The other thing I found jarring in this movie was how often they had to remind you that Jeffrey Jones exists.
Yeah, I kind of wish they hadn't had like corpse Jeffrey Jones at all. Like just say he's dead and move on. Like no funeral, no dead body.
Right. Yeah. Like they say he's dead. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. Obviously, Jeffrey Jones in prison, not being in this movie, don't want to be in this movie. Totally fine. But then there's a sequence that shows his death, which is like, okay. And then his picture is on a headstone. It's like, it's the picture of Jeffrey Jones. And his corpse keeps showing up. I'm like, for like trying to not have this guy in this movie, he's really a lot in this movie. Like, I don't know if you want to be reminding people that he's connected to this franchise.
Sure.
Because I mean, I'm going to say this right now. Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, there's like a one line of like, oh, they found a loophole. They're gone now. Like, there's no mention of them whatsoever, except for one line in the movie.
Sure.
So if they can easily be ignored, why can't we do the same with Jeffrey Jones's character?
Yeah. I mean, the Jeffrey Jones's character, I'm with you. Like, they could have not mentioned him at all, really. They could have been like, oh, we got a divorce. That's all you need to say about the other guy, as far as Catherine O'Hara is concerned, or even Lydia. Yeah, so I'm with you. But I understand, like, that character is more related to the characters that were in this movie than the two ghosts were.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Like,
that makes
I think
sense,
they had to acknowledge the father's not there some way. I'm just not sure it had to be as big as what it was in here. Like,
No,
you didn't have to have the funeral, or certainly the underworld version of him.
Right. I was just surprised that they kept bringing him back. And to the movie's credit, the corpse version of him is headless. So.
Right. And that was probably the grossest of all the underworld people too. Like, the whole like arteries.
Yes.
Squeeching blood every time it talked and stuff like that.
Right.
That was pretty gross compared to what the underground dead normally look like, which is a comical version of that instead of a disgusting version of it.
Yeah, like you had the lady being eaten by her cats, but again, that was sort of like that was a joke, even though it's kind of gross.
And the piranha guy.
Oh, the piranha guys, yeah, with all the piranhas hanging off of him.
It was good.
Yeah.
The big hit in my theater were all the shrunken head guys.
Oh, the Bobs.
People loved that.
Oh, they were great. They were hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
I enjoyed Beetlejuice in his office job too, like all the shenanigans he was up to. I enjoyed all that.
Like running his day to day, his 9 to 5 job. Yeah. I liked when he pops up as a therapist multiple times. He's got the therapist outfit on. I don't know. Like, Michael Keaton is by far for me the best part of this movie. And you're right. Maybe if the whole movie was him, it would be too much, but I was really enjoying everything he did. At no point did I was like, oh, what do you like? This is too much, or man, you're going too over the top with this, Michael Keaton. Like, he's got it dialed in just right.
Mm-hmm. I felt like Catherine O'Hara and Jenna Ortega, you could write a movie with those two, without the Winona Ryder character.
Right.
Just substitute Jenna Ortega in there as kind of like the daughter surrogate, the person who doesn't know about Beetlejuice, basically. Boost Catherine O'Hara's character to like 15% more noticeable in the movie, type of thing.
And then you also get this fun clueless Catherine O'Hara with like her Gen Z granddaughter.
Right. You could still do pretty much everything else. The boyfriend maybe gets a bigger role so that you like actually believe that something's happening here, because I could see the writing on the wall with what was going on with that. Like, they telegraphed to the nth degree that kid was dead.
When she, spoiler.
Oh, right.
When she walks into the house and you see the parents, or you don't see parts of the parents, like, okay, well, what's happening here? Like,
right.
Yeah,
for sure. Plus, they've made a big deal about Jenna not being able to see dead people. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on in the movie that felt, I don't know, like somebody just trying to make a sequel to something who doesn't really have much to say.
Yep.
Which I'm not looking for, like, high art from my Beetlejuice movies. I just want like a basic plot that everybody's bought into, instead of like 10 spidering plots, none of which come together in the end. Unless you count like everybody just coming into the same room for no reason whatsoever, which is
how this movie ends. Everyone's in the same space.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly didn't need any underworld characters other than Beetlejuice and his minions, his shrunken head minions. Like,
are you talking like Monica Bellucci? Or you're talking, I mean, like I don't mind like the
Monica
waiting room
Bellucci.
stuff.
I'm talking about the the
Piranha guy.
Piranha guy.
Okay.
I'm talking about the janitor, like all of these characters that exist completely in the underworld. The cop you could have gotten rid of.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that whatsoever.
Right. The detective wasn't needed. You could have gotten rid of all of that. Focused more on the people above ground and have Beetlejuice interact with them and try to help them with their problem. Like that's the formula for the first movie. Is
Right.
like he's in theory trying to help them in exchange for something he wants. And there wasn't a return to that. I didn't feel. There is, but it's not the crux of the plot.
I do kind of like from the first one the idea that the underworld's like this bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was it is it Kafkian? I can't think of who the word right now. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Like hell is a bureaucracy.
Exactly. Like hell is a bureaucracy. You have to take a number. All these people waiting around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't mind that aspect of it. Again, like Beetlejuice in his office, like the fact that hell is mundane or the afterlife is mundane, I thought is pretty clever.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Like all the major characters we get out of the underworld, with the exception of Beetlejuice, did not do anything to this movie for me.
Yeah. So it sounds like I really hated it, but
No.
I had fun watching it. I laughed. Yeah. Catherine O'Hara, definitely a funny person.
Yes.
And it's fun to see Michael Keaton kind of slip into. It's like there wasn't a 30-year gap. You know what I mean? Like if you put his performance in this one up against the original and you didn't tell somebody there was a 30-year gap, I'm not sure people could spot it.
No, it holds up. It doesn't feel like he's phoning it in or like, oh man, he lost it. He has not lost it whatsoever.
Right. And same thing with Tim Burton. I think the movie visually looks very similar to the original. One thing I didn't like is like in the original, Catherine O'Hara's character remodels the house to look modern or have like modern touches.
Right.
But in this movie, all the modern touches were taken away, but the inside still looked modern.
You talking the outside didn't look modern?
The outside didn't look modern anymore.
Right, because doesn't she add like the weird deck or something
with the fake like facade
exactly, and the hole in it
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like there were touches she made to the house that were gone for some reason, even though the inside was still decorated exactly how they had it. Didn't make sense to me, but anyway. All right, are we ready to letterbox rank this one?
I think so. I just want to see if anything else I want to mention that I didn't.
All right.
Oh, I think this is the last thing that I mean, this has to do with Tim Burton in general. There's just a ton of practical effects in this movie.
Right. By design.
Like,
I mean, he
yeah
intentionally did that to make sure that it looked like the original film. But
I appreciated that. Like I appreciated that like the shrunken head guys were just guys wearing suits. Like it's like a Halloween costume where there's looking out like the chest. Puppets. And you know, like the underworld was a set for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like all its weird Dutch angles and like again, it's this sort of this more tactile feel to it when you know people are dressed up in costume and they're interacting with sets. I'm sure there's CGI in this, obviously. Like I'm not saying that this is a CGI free movie, but they're in a space and they're interacting with things, and I really enjoy that. Sure.
When the Monica Bellucci character like sucks the soul out of somebody, that's a practical effect.
Oh yeah, with that like the accordion up into like a rubber suit. Yeah, right. That was really cool. Yeah. Like and they built rubber suits of characters, and yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Or like
I think if there is CGI in this, it's mostly like wire removal, background effects,
exactly,
background replacement type stuff. But for the most part, yeah, no CGI.
Like, even Willem Dafoe is wearing like a open head wound, like a massive head wound, Harry.
Right.
And it doesn't look realistic whatsoever, but that's fine because like he actually has some prosthetic on his head. So
and it's in a stylized world. So
exactly.
Easy to forgive for sure. All right. Let's letterbox this. What are you going to give Beetlejuice?
3 stars.
I gave it a 3.5.
All right.
I'm looking forward to a third one, which I think they're probably going to pump out considering they're making lots of money on this one.
Yeah. Didn't this movie make over 100 million opening weekend?
Yeah. Current box office, 264 million.
That has to be way above anyone's expectations.
What do you think they spent to make this movie?
Ooh, I'm really bad at this.
Give me a budget. Your best guess.
My best guess is they spent $130.
$100 million.
Okay, all right. I'm a little high.
I don't know about such a round number, but that's the estimate. $100 million.
$100 million. All right.
That being said, I'm not sure I see $100 million on the screen unless they paid the cast quite a bit to come back. But who knows?
It could be the money.
Could be the money.
Yeah. How much is Danny DeVito charging these days per scene?
I have no idea. It was fun though to see some of these Tim Burton alum come back from like older movies.
Like, well, besides Danny DeVito, who else was an alum who hasn't been in the previous movies?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Has Monica Bellucci ever been in a Tim Burton movie?
Tim Burton movie? I don't know for sure. I mean, her character gave me Corpse Bride vibes.
Yeah. Or Willem Dafoe. Has he ever been in one? I don't think so.
Burton movie.
If he has, it's like Big Eyes or something like that. That's
or like Big Fish or one of those.
Yeah, right. Something like that.
I don't remember Bellucci or Dafoe standing out in a Burton movie. Have they ever been in one? It's definitely a possibility. But
yep. All right, let's move on to our top 10 films of Michael Keaton. I looked up his name on Letterboxd. Apparently, I've seen 28 of his movies. Do you remember how many you've seen?
I've only seen 13.
13. Okay, so this is a slim list for you. Some of these you might not even like.
No, I don't like all these movies. And I'm going to admit, some of these, I was like, he was in that movie, but I had to put on my list. So.
Okay, well, let's get into that. Like, did you just rank it based on your preference of the movie, or was it based on the Keaton performance, or a little mix of both, or what?
A little bit of both. I tried to give the Keaton performance a little bit more weight on how I felt about the movie. So there's definitely movies that I ranked higher on this list because I like the Keaton performance more, even though I don't like the movie as much. Sure. But there's definitely some movies where I was like, I don't like this movie whatsoever.
Yeah, like Keaton, a minute, I hated it.
Yeah, I did exactly. Like Keaton made it better, but I'm not going to rank this any higher just because Keaton's in this movie. So
sure.
So like, for example, my number 10, the previously mentioned The Other Guys, a movie you actually challenged me to rewatch because I did not like. So I have watched this one recently. I disliked it even more the second time around. But Michael Keaton is enjoyable in this movie. He plays the police captain of this precinct where you've got Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, who are just terrible cops. And also in this, you have like Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock, who are like superhero cops. Right. And Keaton's just trying to run this awful precinct. And at the same time, he doesn't want to put up with any of these guys. He's got a second job at Bed Bath & Beyond, which he seems to love a lot more, like, just from the clips I was watching. And he is a funny element in this movie that I find utterly unfunny whatsoever. Like, for me, it's just Will Ferrell doing his screaming bit, which gets old very fast. Mark Wahlberg just being like, but I'm the boss. Like, just trying, I don't even know why he's talking in the Boston accent. This movie doesn't take place in Boston whatsoever. And then Keaton just being like, kind of the straight man, but also a comedic character at the same time. So,
sure, he's playing the straight man that for some reason quotes TLC songs. Yeah,
right, exactly.
For no reason. And then when people call him out on it, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, he doesn't even know he's doing it, type of thing. Yeah. I, legendarily disagree with you on this movie. I like this movie.
That's totally fine.
I wouldn't consider it a Keaton movie, but he is good in it.
Oh, no, it's not a Keaton movie, but he is in this movie, and this is a list of top 10 Keaton performances. So
sure, absolutely. My list is all movies that I like, ranked by how much he's important to the movie, and also how much I like the movie at the same time. So pretty close to what you were saying as well. My number 10 is from 2002. It's a drama called Live from Baghdad, which takes place. It takes place shortly before and during the original U.S. invasion of Iraq in the early 90s. The movie was released between 9/11 and the second invasion of Iraq, which is
Oh man.
which is like a weird time period to release a movie about the first invasion
Yeah.
of Iraq, I would say. At that point, when this movie was released, it's on HBO. We had invaded Afghanistan by then, but had not gone into Iraq. So anyway, the movie centers around CNN as a 24-hour news network on cable. The first invasion of Iraq was kind of the first time CNN experienced a ratings bump from an international event. It was the first war that the U.S. had instigated or been involved in that occurred during a time when there was a 24-hour news cycle on some level. And CNN was kind of looked at as lesser than the other networks at the time. A little tabloidy because they had to come up with news 24 hours a day, whereas ABC and CBS only had like 2 hours a day to fill with news, basically.
Right. And like they were cable, and cable in the early 90s was still a novelty.
Looked down upon, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So CNN at the time sent a team to Iraq while all the other networks were leaving the country because war kind of looked imminent. And they fought to get an interview with Saddam. And at the time, a lot of networks didn't like that they did an interview with Saddam because he was like an enemy of the United States type of thing. And CNN was kind of like, we want to talk to anybody. You know, if we don't talk to them, then we're going to go to war with them. So like, let's let them talk type of thing. Anyway, so the movie focuses on these people from CNN, one of which, the leader of which, kind of the producer of this remote segment or segment producer in Iraq is played by Michael Keaton, and like his assistant is played by a young Helena Bonham Carter. Well, this is post Fight Club though, but only by like a few years, basically. And there's a bunch of other people in this movie that you'd probably recognize from the late 90s, early aughts movies.
Okay.
It's a good movie if you like kind of dramas with a historical wrapper that probably isn't the exact truth of what happened, but is close enough to give you a vibe for like why a moment in history happened. Now, it really doesn't give you any debate as far as like why we entered the war. It's more like telling the story of these reporters amongst the war being imminent and like the original shock and awe invasion. Although I don't think they called it that back then.
I don't think we used shock and awe back in the
Shock and
90s,
awe was the second time we got into that.
Yes. Yeah. That was correct.
But it was the first war to kind of be documented front to back by people on the ground live, basically. Anyway, good movie. Michael Keaton's good in it. Pretty much everybody's good in it. Never came out in theaters, direct to TV, HBO, but worth a watch if you're interested in the topic or you just want to see another good Michael Keaton dramatic performance. My number 10.
Well, I'm sort of in this nostalgia period right now where I've been revisiting movies and documentaries about things that happened in like the early 90s when I was like, 10 to 15 years old. So this might be right up my alley of like, oh yeah, I was like 8 when this all happened. I kind of remember it, but it's interesting to look back at it with an adult lens.
This one is free on YouTube and I couldn't find it anywhere else.
It's not on HBO?
Nope. It's not on the Max app.
Or yeah, whatever the Max app we were gonna call it. So
right.
All right. Well,
and it's on YouTube on like some rando's channel. It's like not.
Oh, so like someone. It's not like an official page. Someone just like uploaded.
Somebody uploaded it, and who knows if it'll be there tomorrow? But it was there when I watched
care enough to actually chase it down. Like whatever.
I guess
you can watch this obscure Michael Keaton movie from 2002.
Yeah. Well, I think if they don't have it in HD, they generally don't put it on the app. That might be what's holding it back.
But give us a standard def cut.
Yep.
All right. My number 9 is a 2020 movie that Michael Keaton is in called The Trial of the Chicago 7. This is a Aaron Sorkin directed and written movie. And it is about a peaceful war protest in 1968 that broke out into violence. violence, most likely instigated by the police. But then 7 of the organizers of this peaceful protest were put on trial for inciting a riot. And this is about these 7 trying to defend themselves against what appears to be a system that's rigged against them. If not, maybe you can call it kangaroo court, trying to blame the peaceful protesters for the violence. Anyway, in this movie, Michael Keaton plays the retired attorney general who's now a private citizen. And the main character, played by Eddie Redmayne, essentially approaches Michael Keaton in his office want him as a character witness and as to have some testimony to sort of be on their side. And Michael Keaton's character sort of knows politics. He's like, yeah, I used to be in the public sector. I'm now in the private sector. And I don't want to get involved with, like trying to go against the president and go against the sitting attorney general. Now, Michael Keaton delivers this all much better than I am because he is Michael Keaton. So like he plays his character with both like earnestness to what he's saying, but also a little bit of teeth behind it. Like, I'm not getting involved. And how dare you, kid, come into my office and try and tell me what I need to do. And it's not a huge performance. I mean, he's only in a scene or two, but I think it is a standout performance in a movie that has a very large cast. He's able to make his mark on just a couple scenes.
Nice. It's a good one. I like it. I considered it, but I didn't really remember him in it.
Yeah, this was for some of these movies, I had to like find YouTube clips of their scenes
to remind yourself.
To remind myself, I'm like, okay, Michael Keaton's in Chicago Trial 7. I don't think he's one of the 7. Let me remind me. And then I watched a couple clips. Like, okay, that's right. I remember this now. So
sure.
Others I know pretty well, but a couple I was like, I need some reminders.
No, I'm with you for sure. My number 9 is The Paper from 1994. This is a drama with a little bit of comedy. You watched Parenthood recently, right?
I did, yes.
Okay. This is also a Ron Howard movie like Parenthood, and it has a very similar vibe to Parenthood, where it's like a comedy, but like it's kind of normal people that occasionally funny things happen to. You know what I mean? It's less like joke or slapstick or anything like that. It's just like normal people in situations that occasionally humorous things are happening in relation to them. This is about a newspaper, and they're trying to break a story before a deadline. And Michael Keaton plays kind of the main reporter for this newspaper who doesn't want to go to print because he's pretty sure they're about to accuse some kids of like murdering some people that they didn't actually do it. So he's convinced that they didn't actually do it, but he doesn't have enough of a story to like prove that. And their newspaper is kind of considered like half tabloid, half real news, but they want to be real news. And so he's like, we can't print a headline that I'm pretty sure is false. Like, we have to prove this or else we can't go to print. And so there's a bunch of other people in the movie from the time, like Glenn Close, Marissa Tomei, Randy Quaid doing like a normal character, which was interesting.
Yeah, it's a scene with
right. And Robert Duvall, he was the columnist for the newspaper, so he's a little wacky because he doesn't have to like print actual news. He just writes his opinion about stuff. But anyway, so there's lots of people that you'll recognize in the movie, and it's an interesting moment in time, both from the idea that like newspapers barely exist anymore. So the idea that like this movie being made today, kind of impossible because it just doesn't exist. And also all of these people being frozen in time in this style of movie that doesn't get made anymore either. This was one that I watched specifically for this list. I had just never seen it. And it has music by Randy Newman, and so like even that like brings you back to this moment in time as well. It's just very stylized for like an early to mid 90s comedy directed by Ron Howard for sure. It fit all those cliches, and I enjoyed watching it. My number 9.
Well, you may say that they don't make newspaper movies anymore, but my number 8 is a newspaper movie. And in fact, it's about a newspaper having an impact in the 21st century, which is even wilder.
Sure.
I don't know if
I
there
mean,
has been
barely in the 20th century.
21st.
21st century. Because like the movie's set like before 9/11.
Oh, is okay? So Spotlight set before 9/11?
Spotlight is set before 9/11.
Oh, I thought okay. All right. Well, it's still 21st century.
Like 9/11 happens in the movie.
That's true. It's a good point. Okay. So very early in the 21st century, but still 21st century. My
Sure.
number 8 is Spotlight. Yeah, and this is the movie, the true story about the Boston Globe investigating and eventually uncovering the child abuse scandal involving the Catholic Church and sort of blowing the whole thing open. And in this movie, Michael Keaton plays the lead investigator on a journalism team. I think they're called like the Spotlight team.
Mhm.
And the movie starts small where they just, his team gets word of like, oh, here's this Catholic priest who's been moved around a couple times because of abuse. So they start out investigating this one priest. And then as they start talking to people, they realize that this problem is bigger and bigger than they're expecting until it becomes the huge sort of earth-shattering scandal that it became. And throughout this movie, Michael Keaton is sort of balancing trying to push forward with the investigation because he knows there's something huge happening, but also there's a politics side to this thing, both within the newspaper and within the greater community. And he has to sort of fight for his team and be the face of this whole thing
Mhm.
while his team is out there pushing forward and trying to, find the bigger scandal. And Michael Keaton has to like try and do the right thing, even if all the pressure is on him to like, hey, let's put a halt to this and let's bury this. And it's obviously the real life character he's playing was a noble person, and Keaton plays it with the same sort of nobility.
It's a good one for sure. It might show up on my list a little later.
All right.
My number 8 is Multiplicity from 1996. Have you ever seen Multiplicity?
I've never seen this movie. I remember
Okay.
this movie being heavily advertised when I was a kid. I've seen the trailer a million times, but I've actually never seen it in the movie.
Yeah, it was definitely a rental store staple too.
Oh yeah, I can picture the VHS box with like all the Michael Keatons in a row, right? Like kind of holding each
Absolutely.
other's hips.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the premise of this movie is this guy, he figures out at his work that he can duplicate himself. Like he works for like a science company, even though he's not a
Right.
scientist. He can duplicate himself. And so he's having a hard time balancing work life and home life. His wife, played by Andy McDonald, who is not excited about how much time he's spending at work. And so he duplicates himself and has work version of himself go do work. Meanwhile, he stays at home and like makes sure that when she gets home, things are perfect. Basically,
Mhm.
he has enough time to dedicate to her. And then work version of himself is tired of just working constantly. And so he doesn't want to go to work either. And so he makes a duplicate of himself. And every time there's a duplicate made, the personality of the clone changes and they get a little dumber, basically. And so by the end of the movie, they're like 4 or 5 duplicates deep. And the version of Michael Keaton playing as the 4th or 5th deep is like basically caveman Michael Keaton, essentially. And so it's a movie that is built to give Michael Keaton the opportunity to play different caricatures
Right.
and get them be more extreme over time, which makes kind of sense because like for a guy who can play Beetlejuice, but also be in a movie like Spotlight or some of these other movies, even like before people knew he had real dramatic chops, like he was always in movies, not always, he was occasionally in movies that seemed too wacky for him, I would say, but yet he would pull it off. And so I think Multiplicity was like presented as a playground for him to be serious and also wacky in the same movie. And it was interesting. This is one that, like you, I didn't see when I was a kid, even though it was like I knew of it.
Oh
It
yeah.
just never entered my world until I watched it much later into adulthood. And when I watched it, I was kind of like, this is cute, but also like kind of 90s gross. You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of jokes in this that you watch it now, like 20 plus years later, and you're like, ooh, yeah, that's a joke you would not be making today in a
it's like,
mainstream
this
movie.
doesn't, buddy.
For sure. It's a lot about like, there's a lot of sexist stuff in it. And it's at one point, like one of his clones has sex with his wife. And so then there's like, that's like the one rule he gives the clones is like, you don't do that.
Okay.
And then a clone does it. And the movie flirts with the idea that like this was actually rape. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because like if you're deceiving somebody into having sex with you,
right, it's under false
by
pretense.
pretending to be somebody else, that's rape.
Yeah.
False pretense, like you said. So the movie treats that glibly. And watching it as an adult, so far removed from when the jokes like that were like commonplace and accepted, it took me out of the movie for sure. Especially since the movie clearly thinks it's being hilarious with this premise. And I was just kind of like, I'm not finding the humor in this. And you guys clearly think this is hilarious. You know what I mean? And so it put me off to the rest of the movie for sure.
Right. Yeah. Because like this comedic tone doesn't work anymore.
Right. It made everything else feel more devious than I think they originally intended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does the wife know that there's clones, or does she still think there's just one?
She knows by the end.
Okay, but like she doesn't know during the movie that this is his plan, that he's cloning himself.
No.
Okay.
She doesn't know during I mean, the premise of the movie is, will she find out?
Oh, okay, I got you.
That like
I've only seen the trailer, so I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
The premise of the movie is like, will she find out that the only reason he's now a good husband is because he's been cloning himself?
Okay, yep.
And now the clones, which pretty much only retain his worst instincts as they go deeper and deeper.
Mm-hmm.
By the time she gets to the last one, he's just like trying to club her over the head so he can have sex with her, basically. Do you know what I mean? Because that's Michael Keaton's character at its base instinct.
Right.
Essentially, caveman style. So anyway, it's an interesting movie. Occasionally funny, but I had a hard time with it towards the end. But if you want to see Michael Keaton act pretty wildly beyond a Beetlejuice type movie, it's this one for sure. I mean, the scenes where there's 4 of him in a room and they're having dialogue together and he's playing like completely different versions of himself was kind of interesting to watch. But anyway, my number 8, Multiplicity.
Maybe I'll check it out. I'm on the fence on that one.
Sure.
Haven't seen it in 30 years. Don't know if I need to break that streak. So my number 7 is another movie where Michael Keaton's playing a real life person. I think it's the last movie on my list where he's playing a real life person. And this is 2016's The Founder.
That's
in this case,
bingo.
That's mine.
Is that also yours? Oh, perfect. All right. Well, let's talk about The Founder.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this, Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc. And Ray Kroc is known as the founder of McDonald's, not the restaurant, but the corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So McDonald's was started by 2 brothers with the last name McDonald. And Ray Kroc kind of came across their restaurant and he was impressed by their efficiency, how they had a small menu, how they got food out fast. They weren't using utensils or plates or anything. And he was like, oh, this is the future.
This is a winning formula.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And being a savvy businessman, this is like the 1950s. He was like, I'm going to take this huge.
Mm-hmm.
But also being a ruthless businessman, he's like, I'm going to take this huge and cut you guys out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie is about the growth of McDonald's as a national brand, but also the tactics that Michael Keaton characters took to ensure that he was benefiting financially from the growth of McDonald's and not the original founders of the concept and the idea. So yeah, again, it's another movie where Michael Keaton's playing a lot of depth because he's the main character. And on the one hand, you kind of want to root for him because McDonald's becomes, for better or worse, like one of the biggest, not the biggest restaurant, I guess Subway's the biggest restaurant in the world, but the second biggest restaurant franchise in the world. But you also see how he's kind of taking advantage of the little guy and how he, because he's smarter and more business savvy, he's able to benefit from this whole deal where these guys get kind of pushed out of the situation.
Yeah. I mean, that's generally how I felt about the movie too. I have vague memories of it being like a little long. Like they could have cut like a little bit out of it towards the end
Yeah, I don't remember that much about it
to get us there completely. But it was interesting to see Michael Keaton as Ray Kroc, as kind of the devious businessman, or ruthless businessman rather.
Right. Yeah.
Especially since growing up as a kid, it was a very different presentation of Ray Kroc to me. Like I always thought Ray Kroc started McDonald's. Like that's definitely the insinuation when I was young.
Right. Like he's the founder. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where they get the title, is like everybody thinks he's the founder. And then you watch the movie and you realize, no, he just stole the concept in a way, essentially.
Right.
The concept of the name and everything like that.
It's like Movie Pass.
Right. I mean, he did.
Farnsworth, the other guy, were the founder, or Mitch, whatever, the other founders. You're like, actually, no, these other two guys founded it. And
yeah. And probably the saddest part of the whole movie is the fact that he probably could have shared with those guys and still just been insanely, unimaginably rich. You know what I mean?
Right.
And also those guys could have gone along with him and it wouldn't have been a bad feelings situation at all. But that's not how he operated.
No, I think people like Ray Kroc don't get to be where they are by sharing, even if they could have.
Yeah. I don't know. You don't think McDonald's could have been like a huge multinational corporation and he also could have paid those guys?
No, I think he could have, but I'm just saying, like, to become the kind of person that he is, sharing is not part of your personality. Because like for every
think in order to be that mega wealthy, that successful, you have to be a jerk. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think because people who are usually my understanding is like when you're mega wealthy, you're wealthy off of maybe one or two things, but there could be 50 things you've also done that didn't quite get you there.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of mega wealthy is just like, not a lottery, but sort of like you're trying to find the big one.
Sure.
And yeah, like when the big one happens, you could share because it's the big one. You don't need all that money. But if you shared on all the little ones, you never would have made any money in the first place.
Gotcha.
So I think you have to by nature be a little selfish to get the big one. I don't know. I'm not a billionaire. I have not run large companies. I don't have that drive to be like that kind of person. So I can't speak to it, but this is kind of my inference. So
makes sense. I enjoy the movie though. I think as like quote unquote biopics go, or like
biopics,
it's like partially a biopic of him and partially a biopic of McDonald's.
Yeah.
In a weird way. They're definitely a lot worse than this for sure. It's kind of plainly told, but it's McDonald's. Like, what do you expect?
Right. Yeah. It's not some groundbreaking biopic.
Right.
It's just, it kind of like it drops you in and here's McDonald's.
They
They
made burgers fast and figured out how to do it in like every corner of the United States. Like what's left to talk about?
Yeah. It's just more like, here's the true story.
All right. Exactly. Right. What's your number 6?
My number 6 is Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance.
Surprised this even made your list.
Well, I only have 13 to choose from. And I do I forgot that Alejandro Inarritu directed this, who I like as a director, but I don't think this is his best directed movie. But let's not talk about the movie. Let's talk about Michael Keaton, because there's a reason why this is number 6. It's kind of in the middle. This is sort of the break between like all the movies after this I really like. They're all like these top 5 movies.
Not including Birdman, like everything after this movie.
After this, yeah. Our movies, which is funny because I was just crapping on Beetlejuice earlier in the podcast, and now it's gonna spoiler to my top 5 here. But that's great. That's a great Keaton performance. But in this movie, Michael Keaton is not the issue I had. I have lots of issues with Birdman. Michael Keaton is not it. I think he does a very incredible job in this movie, kind of playing a meta version of himself.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of people can point to this movie sort of relaunching his career. And in this movie, he is playing a aging actor who used to be a superhero, who had a bigger career that was kind of in his past. And now he's trying to do his comeback. And he's sort of being haunted by his past, if that's the best way to put it, as he's trying to do his comeback. In this case, he's doing a comeback play, correct? Not a comeback movie.
Mhm.
But still, like his, ghosts of his past are haunting him throughout the movie is the best way to put it. And yeah, I think, Michael Keaton in this movie showed why he should still be a relevant actor and prove like I still got this. I can still carry a movie. I can be in a kind of a weird movie that's weirdly presented and it's got a lot of things going on, but still anchor this movie and be the kind of the emotional core of it.
Mhm.
And as much as I have problems with this movie, Michael Keaton's not one of them. I like his performance a lot in Birdman.
Nice. It may or may not come up on my list at some point.
I'm sure it will.
My number 6 is the most recent movie on my list. It's Worth. The movie Worth, WORTH, which is
Not familiar with it.
great drama from 2020, directed by Sarah Colangelo. What else she's made? Anything I've heard of? No, it's the only one I've heard of. Anyway, this is about, so 9/11 happened, right? And after
Okay, back to 9/11
back
today.
to 9/11. 9/11 happened, and then there was a big lawsuit from a bunch of the survivors of people who died in 9/11
Right.
against the government. The government created a fund called the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund.
Right.
And then there was a question of how much money should be in it and how should it be distributed. So like victim could be you died and you have no surviving family members, or you died and you have 8 children and a wife, and you were the primary breadwinner of the household. So like, how do you come to a number that satisfies both of those situations? How do you come to a number where you're a victim, where you, not that there were a lot of these, but you were injured and not killed in 9/11 type of thing? Like they deserved some money as well. And so this was a hard question to answer because you're asking an entity to determine the value of a life from one person to another. And so there was one lawyer who was kind of appointed to make these value judgments. That's the character that Michael Keaton's playing, this lawyer. Okay. And it's basically going through a little bit of his life before 9/11, like a little tiny bit of his life before 9/11, setting up why he might be the right person to take on this kind of impossible task. And then his law firm gets the job from the government. He leads the effort. He puts together a team and then runs into all these political issues, not necessarily political, meaning like Republicans and Democrats, more political amongst the survivors as far as like how the funds are going to be distributed. And so the title of the movie Worth is referring to the worth of the life of a human being and like actually trying to put dollar values to that while not making people who are experiencing the worst moment of their lives really feel lesser because they got less money than the next person type of thing. So anyway, it's a great drama. If you want to see Michael Keaton like really sink his teeth into something, there's a couple movies that I would recommend. This would be one of them. And I think it's really underseen and pretty sure it's a Netflix movie. So it's waiting for you to go watch whenever you're ready. Worth, my number 6.
That is our third 9/11 mention, I think, just on this list.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Weird.
So maybe there'll be one more out there. Who knows?
He likes his 9/11 movies.
All right. My number 5.
I mean, it was just 9/11 like 4 days ago. So
that's true. That's true. So never forget. My number 5 is not just a sequel, it's a threequel. And this is Toy Story 3. This is where the toys end up in a daycare that seems to be wonderful, but it's actually run by a ruthless teddy bear who runs like a prison camp. And in this case, Michael Keaton plays Ken, as in Ken and Barbie. He is the original Ken. Sorry, Ryan Gosling. Michael Keaton beat you to it. His performance is so good that when I saw the movie, I didn't even know it was Michael Keaton because I don't know what he did to his voice. He sounds super young in this performance. Like he does not like. I think Michael Keaton not having a gravelly voice, but definitely he's got like a little gruffness to his voice.
He does for sure.
Yeah. This Ken is smooth. I was like, oh, good job, Michael Keaton. Like you've got range. You can even bring Ken to life. I really like this Ken also because he's kind of like a swinger is the best way to play it. It's a kids movie, so they're not like calling him a swinger, but just I would say if I was to describe his character to an adult, I'd say, yeah, he's kind of like a swinger, sort of like this 70s, snazzy dresser, but also like a bit of a ladies' man situation. So I think it's not a huge role. It's a movie I like though, and it's definitely a memorable character that he played within that movie.
Yeah. It's a good one. Well, is it a good one? I don't really like that movie that much. It's basically the worst Toy Story movie.
Oh, it's the second best Toy Story movie. 4 is the worst Toy Story movie. It's still a really good one.
It's the fourth best Toy Story movie. We can all agree.
Disagree.
We can all agree it's the fourth best.
No, we can all disagree. I think it's the second best. And number 1's the best by far. Number 1's a classic, but
sure, it goes 1, 2, 4, 3.
1, 3, 2, 4.
No.
We can agree on 1. Let's agree on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll agree to agree that it's the fourth best, all right?
No. We'll agree to agree that it is somewhere between 2 and 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Not agreeing to that, but okay. My number 5 is from 1997. It's Jackie Brown.
Yeah, good pick.
And he's good in this. I wouldn't say it's a Michael Keaton movie at all. But I'm not sure who. I mean, this is a Tarantino movie, right? Tarantino looms large over all of the actors in Jackie Brown, I would say, including Michael Keaton.
I think you can call it Pam Grier movie, though. She's definitely
the
main
most
character.
She's the most non-Quentin Tarantino part of it.
She's Jackie Brown.
I'd say it's actually 90% Quentin Tarantino and like 8% Pam Grier, and then 2% is left for everybody else in the movie.
Okay, I disagree. I don't think it's 90%.
I'm not talking about total screen time. I'm talking about why people like the movie.
Oh, okay. You're saying people like it because it's a Tarantino movie, not because it's a Pam Grier movie.
Right.
I got you.
Right.
Okay.
Glad I could define that for you.
I was like, where are you going with this? She's Jackie Brown.
No, she's the lead. She's through most of the movie for sure. And Michael Keaton plays an ATF agent who gets in the mix as far as like all the crime shenanigans that are happening in the movie. I don't need to tell people much about Jackie Brown because if they've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, I'm sure they've seen Jackie Brown. It's a very popular Tarantino movie, and Michael Keaton's good in it. At least what they give him to do, he's good in it. Seems like a weird movie for him to be in 1997, because like Multiplicity was like 94, and typically people are in Tarantino movies when they can't be in anything else. Like it's meant to elevate you from like B movie status.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he was fully in purgatory at that point. Movie purgatory.
Was Multiplicity his movie after Batman Returns?
Yes, I believe so.
So I think that's why it was such a big deal, because like here's Batman's next movie. It was Multiplicity.
Right.
I wonder if Tarantino did some stunt casting. Like, hey, we're gonna get Batman in my movie.
Sure.
Because at that point, when did Batman Forever come out?
It was probably out before Jackie Brown. Before or around the same time. You're talking Batman 89, then Returns 92
92
or 93,
Forever-
something like that.
Forever could have been like somewhere between 95 and 97.
Right. That's why I'm
Okay,
thinking
so-
like this was released in the zone.
Yeah, definitely within. Yeah, maybe it was like, hey, I got Batman in my movie, even though it's Val Kilmer was already Batman by that point.
Could be.
Yep.
Anyway, Jackie Brown, great movie. My number 5.
May make an appearance later. My number 4 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This is the first Spider-Man MCU movie with good old, I almost said Tobey Maguire, but it's not him. What's the guy's name? Tom Holland.
Right.
Chiwetel Elijah
No. No, I got the name wrong. I got to pronounce it correctly. Oh, don't twiddle me on that one. You recorded that one? Great. Super.
You got Chiwetel.
Anyway. Yeah, that one I knew about. I didn't know you pulled, don't twiddle me. What are we talking about? Spider-Man. Oh, yeah. In this movie, Michael Keaton plays, spoiler alert, he plays the Vulture. Right. The main bad guy. But throughout this movie, he's kind of a working man. I think he plays like the leader of a wrecking crew that's kind of cleaning up after superheroes.
Mhm.
He's sort of like, it's like taking apart buildings and he's finding all this weird tech. Right. And he's sort of this everyman whose life is being negatively affected by superheroes. And then kind of culminates in becoming the Vulture and someone who wants to fight superheroes. And he's like a top 3 villain in the MCU, I would say. Like Spider-Man Homecoming is not a big movie like an Avengers movie, but the fact that you understand why this guy is a villain, like, you know, the negative impacts that the superhero life is having on his small neighborhood, the tech he's finding, and, you know, just how he just wants to live a normal life. And Michael Keaton plays it with both kindness and menace. Like there's that one scene where they're in the cab together, him and Tom Holland and Peter Parker. Because isn't Peter Parker like dating? Is Michael Keaton like Zendaya's adopted father or something? Is that the connection? Or is
I don't remember.
Mary Jane not connected to this movie yet? I haven't seen this movie in a long time.
I don't remember.
I feel okay. I'm someone's gonna totally write in and correct me. I want to say that Peter Parker is dating the daughter of Michael Keaton in this movie.
Oh,
But
yeah,
don't
that
think
definitely happens.
But it's not Zendaya. It's not Mary Jane.
No,
It's a different
Zendaya's
person.
No, Zendaya's dad is Michael Keaton.
Is it? Okay, I don't remember
Yeah,
whatsoever.
no, Zendaya's
Okay.
dad is Michael Keaton.
It is Zendaya. All right.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a scene like in a car where they're talking like dad to girlfriend's son. And Michael Keaton also lets in, is like, I know who you are. And it's such a great conversation and menace behind the whole two. I don't know. It's a really good Michael Keaton villain performance that we don't get a ton of.
I don't like that movie either.
I know. And you could tell I remember this movie super well for all the non-Michael Keaton-y parts. But he stood out by far in this movie for me.
Sure. I mean, yeah, is this the movie that also has the lizard in it?
No, that's Amazing Spider-Man. That's the
Right. That's Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think.
No, that's the first one.
That's the
Electro
first
is
one.
2.
Oh, you're right. you're right.
Andrew Garfield. That's the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's fine, but okay, my number 4 is the aforementioned Spotlight. And I don't have much to add that you already said about this movie. So I'm not. What I would like to talk about is Spotlight won Best Picture the year.
Yeah,
it
that's
was
right.
released, which seems insane. Let's talk about the other movies
Please.
who were nominated that year, and let's see if there was one that in retrospect should beat Spotlight.
But before you do this, I had this idea the other day. It'd be fun, maybe around Oscar season, to look at the Oscars from 10 years ago and
Absolutely.
talk about the major categories and who won and quote unquote, did they get it right?
Let's do it 20 years because we're about to do the 10 years right now.
Okay, so that's true. That's a good point. This is okay. All right, let's do that. Let's look at like an Oscar 20 years ago and
Sure.
see if they got it right
Right.
by history standards.
Okay. So in 2015, these are the movies that were nominated. Spotlight, which one?
Yep.
Then you've got The Big Short. Does Spotlight beat The Big Short?
In my eyes, yes.
Me too. What about Bridge of Spies?
Ooh.
Spotlight beats Bridge of Spies. Come on.
Oh,
Bridge of Spies. These are all good movies.
Yeah.
But come on. Spotlight's a more consequential movie than Bridge of Spies.
Well, are we talking about like quality or consequentialness?
Whatever you would give an Academy Award for.
I mean, I just give it for the people. Okay, moving on. So
the people that are in the movie or the people at home?
The people at home.
Oh, okay.
That's why Transformers should be winning every Oscar. If Transformers got more Oscars, more people would watch. That's all I'm saying.
I don't doubt
it. Yeah.
Brooklyn.
I've never seen Brooklyn. It's sitting on my collection right over there.
I think I gave you guys a copy.
I think you gave it
Brooklyn.
to me.
Because I thought it'd be a good one for you and Megan to watch together, but not yet.
I'll get around to it.
I think you'll like it.
We'll get around to it.
The only reason I sent it to you is because it's a chick flick that I like, that I think you would like too.
It's hard getting Megan to watch not recent movies.
Oh, she wants to watch new release movies.
Yeah, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
Like usually, like we'll sit down and she's like, "Oh, what's out?" Or like, what's streaming, or what can we watch on VOD?
Sure.
And which I totally get. Like I want to jump back into the past, but she wants to watch what's now.
Sure. Well, tell her that the reason why I gave you guys that is because I thought both of you would enjoy it.
Okay.
Mad Max: Fury Road.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that should have probably won.
That's the better movie.
I think so.
It's not as consequential, if that's our barometer.
There's a couple other bangers on this list, though, that probably should have beat Spotlight in my world.
Sure.
The Martian. Maybe not beating Spotlight, but that's a good movie.
I think The Martian is better than Spotlight. I still would have given it to Mad Max Fury Road of that entire list. But yeah, I think Martian should have beat it also. Yep.
What about The Revenant?
Oh, back to Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think that is a better movie than Spotlight. I do not think it's better than The Martian or Fury Road, though.
Okay. I think maybe Mad Max Fury Road is great. I love Mad Max Fury Road for sure. But The Revenant might be a better Best Oscar movie or Best Picture movie for me.
Would they not give it because didn't Naruto just win the year before for Birdman?
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that's why it lost, but it is interesting that DiCaprio won an acting award and the movie didn't win Best Picture.
Yes, I find that.
I kind of feel like that was the way they rewarded the movie.
Exactly. They're like, we just gave Naruto Best Picture last year. We're not going to do it twice.
Right. Finally, the last movie that didn't win against Spotlight, Room.
Oh,
2015 might have been the best year for movies in the 2010s.
That's a great year. Yeah.
I mean, those are short of The Big Short. I like all of these movies.
And The Big Short's a good movie.
It's fine, but it's a Best Picture nominee. Come on.
No.
Right.
Room. Yeah. I mean, again, I think I would still put Mad Max Fury Road as my number one.
Sure.
But I mean, man, there'd be some cojones to give Room Best Picture, because that's a rough movie.
That's probably why it didn't win. Spotlight is like a rough movie, but also one that's uplifting in the end, kind of.
Right. It's like the heroic version of like, yeah, these terrible things are happening, but we're shining a spotlight on it, and we're breaking this whole thing open.
Whereas in Room, good things happen, and also it's still awful.
It's just I mean, it's half a movie of trauma.
Sure.
And then what? Yeah. And then the
aftermath,
the good part,
trauma.
quote unquote, after the trauma. Yeah.
Right. Does it make Brooklyn any more interesting knowing it's on this short list of great movies?
I mean, I think it makes Brooklyn. It's got big shoes to fill. Like, is it of the same quality of Room and Mad Max Fury Road and The Martian?
I mean, it's a different type of movie than those for sure. But I think it's pretty good. Anyway.
No, I do want to see it. It's sitting over here. It's under 2 hours. I have it on Blu-ray. If I
Sure.
cannot convince Megan to watch it with me one night, I'll just watch it on my own.
That was a stacked year, though, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great year.
All right.
All right. So that was kind of your number 4 spotlight, correct?
Yep.
Cool, awesome. My number 3, previously mentioned Jackie Brown. Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add to this. I like Michael Keaton as the it was ATF FBI, I don't know, some federal agent. He's trying to flip Jackie Brown. He's trying to get her to kind of, like be an informant, but also knows he's being played by her at the same time.
Mhm.
So he's not a dumb cop.
He's also
He's
kind of
wise to her.
interested in her.
Yes, I was going to mention that he's kind of into her too. I mean, it's
Mhm.
Pam Grier. Like I,
Sure.
totally understand. But yeah, he's kind of, it's one of those situations where he's like, he doesn't say this, but he's like, yeah, if you weren't a suspect, this would be a different conversation about like dates and things. So
Mhm.
he's definitely into her. But
Well, and he ends up
I like the
doing her
character.
favors that are outside the confines of the law.
exactly,
Yeah.
yep. And I did see that he reprised this character in another movie. I don't know what it was because I was looking at movies that he was in. And I was like, oh, I've seen that movie too. And then I read like, oh, it's like a cameo of him playing the same agent.
Huh.
I'll figure it out. I don't know. I can't. Obviously, it's got to be post Jackie Brown.
Like not
Out
Tarantino related?
of Sight. That's what it was.
Okay.
'Cause I think
Out of Sight was
ca-
before Jackie Brown, wasn't it?
I think came out the same year.
Oh, interesting.
Let me see. Let me pull up. Sorry, everyone. This is
So
I should have
like
been more prepared for this.
Soderbergh and him got together. Like Soderbergh said, "Can I use your character?" Or like, how did that work?
He's kind of playing the same character. Yeah.
Hmm.
With the same. Yeah. Out of Sight. Here we go. Apparently, he was in Herbie Fully Loaded too. Is that going to make your list?
No, but I have seen that. I
Okay.
don't remember him in it. Nor do I remember the rest of the movie.
Let's see. Is he credited in Out of Sight?
Hmm.
Can I take a guess? So we're down. Okay, here we go. Michael Keaton plays Ray Nicolette in Out of Sight, uncredited. And then the character he plays in Jackie Brown, I think, is also called Ray Nicolette.
Interesting.
Out of Sight came out a year later.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, he kind of replayed his character,
That makes me want to watch Out of
Yeah.
Sight again.
Ray Nicolette.
Hmm.
And then Samuel L. Jackson is uncredited as Hijira Henry. I wonder who that's supposed to be. Anyway.
I don't know.
So yeah. Anyway, so I saw like, oh, he's in Out of Sight. Like, oh, he's kind of playing the same character. He's a cameo in it. So I could not include Out of Sight on my top 10 list because it was such a small role and the same character.
Sure. My number 3 is from 1989, and it is Batman.
Oh, wait. I know what your number 1 is. What is your number 2 though?
I guess you'll have to wait.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, this is the first iteration of modern Batman. Like at some point they made like a movie based on the TV show back in the 60s or whatever it was. But
Right.
This is the first time Batman was presented in a somewhat serious way to movie audiences, and I love this movie. I remember the Batman hype was huge.
Oh yeah.
I was like 11 years old or something like that, 11, 12 years old. So I was like the perfect age. I remember learning how to draw the Batman symbol,
Oh yes.
the version from the movie, and then putting that symbol everywhere I went. Like anything, every chalkboard, everywhere I could
Right.
write this thing, I wrote it for some reason. I was obsessed.
It's the best Batman symbol. Let's be honest.
For sure. It's the best
Yeah.
intro too, like just floating around the logo itself and stuff like that.
Right.
It was so
Yeah.
cool at the time. You watch the movie now and like it's a kind of a thin movie, I would say. Like the movie is all atmosphere, I would say. And like like heightened performances. There's not much to the movie, but as an introduction to that version of Batman, a reintroduction to a character and like reinvention, it was pulled off flawlessly with a perfect cast. I think Michael Keaton was just under the mainstream enough that like he didn't have much baggage for your average audience goer, and so he was perfect as a playboy and also the Dark Knight. Also, when you watch this movie, like there's almost no fighting in it. Like Batman barely fights anybody in the entire movie.
Because he couldn't move in that suit.
But like compared to all the other
Yeah,
Batmans, you know what I
right.
mean? Like this one, he barely moves. Whereas my young brain thought he was like the coolest, best fighter ever. And you watch it now and you're like, he never fights. The scenes where he's supposed to fight, he's like fighting off screen most of it.
Right. It's a lot of standing or like holding bad guys up or using tools.
Right. Or like bad
Right.
guys getting yanked off screen.
Yep.
You know what I mean? No actual like hand-to-hand combat. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, this movie's vibes. It survived decades now, and I think it holds up pretty well for what it is. And I enjoyed Keaton in it. My number 3.
My number 2 favorite Keaton performance. I know I kind of crapped on this movie at the beginning of the podcast, but it's his performance as Beetlejuice. Again, we talked a lot about this. I think Beetlejuice is an amazing character, and I think that Keaton does a perfect job with it. I really have nothing else to say about Beetlejuice.
That's a bingo.
Also, my number 2. I have nothing to add.
What is your number 1? Wait, is it Spotlight? have you not said Spotlight
I
yet?
already said Spotlight.
You said Spotlight already. That's right. Is it the other guys? All right, we're gonna find out. It's probably Birdman. Anyway, my number 1 is previously mentioned Batman. I don't have a ton to add to that. I haven't seen this movie in a while. I do own it on Blu-ray, and I'm waiting for my son to want to watch it. He's kind of interested in watching it, so we're getting
Okay.
close.
If he
but-
was ready right now, you'd let him watch it, right? There's like nothing.
No. I mean, I think he's ready. I'm
Sure.
waiting. I want him to be like,
actually
let's watch
care
Batman.
about it.
Exactly. I don't want to force like he wants to watch Dark Knight Batman.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, that's a little intense for, he's gonna be 9, but like it's a little
Sure.
intense for 9-year-olds. So
But he could watch the original 4 Batman movies.
I think he could watch definitely Batman 89, Batman 92. I actually watched with Megan like a year ago, and there's a lot going on in that movie. It's a fun movie, but it's pretty grotesque at times.
What, just like the penguin of it all and stuff like that? Or
Well, the penguin, like how Christopher Walken goes, he has a pretty grotesque death.
I don't remember it.
You know,
what happens?
he gets like electrocuted,
Okay.
right? Like he gets like the whole skeleton treatment, which are probably nothing worse than you see like Indiana Jones. Catwoman fall into her death and then kind of consumed by her cats. I would just say overall it's kind of a bit of a darker movie, but
I gotta watch Returns again. Sounds awesome.
oh no, it's I may have I probably saw Batman first, but I definitely saw Return in the theater.
Mhm.
And I was like, I was 9 years old. I was like, oh, I should be watching this movie. So anyway,
Nice.
Michael Keaton is my Batman. I think we ranked the Batmans a while ago,
Mhm.
and he is my Batman. He plays both really well, both Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Oh wait, this is my number 2, Beetlejuice. My number 1, Batman. What's your number 1?
Sure. My number 1 is Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of
Okay.
Ignorance. You guessed it eventually. This one's great. I'm not sure it's the most Michael Keaton movie, but it's maybe my favorite movie starring Michael Keaton.
Right.
I rewatched it just to confirm that that's true. This is the 4th time I've seen it since it was released in 2014.
4 times.
And I love this movie. I love,
Why?
what do you mean why? It's so interesting. It's meta. It's snappy. It's like a jazzy movie, I would say.
Jazz.
It's
Yeah.
jazzy. Like the soundtrack itself is like just drums and random instruments, flows really nicely from one scene to another. The one shot presentation, I think, is kind of genius. All the characters, with the exception of Michael Keaton's character, are like heightened to the point of being annoying, I would say. But every time I feel a little annoyed by them, it moves from a different spot of the backstage area. And I like how it goes from the stage, and you'll have like a piece of a scene from the play that they're practicing or ramping up to, and then it will move into the backstage and give you like characterization, and then you'll see that characterization reflected on the stage practice again. Like everything that's changed during the backstage segments, you see the results of those changes, those like plot developments on the stage practice itself. And I like all the actors in it. I like what they're doing in the movie. And I think Inarritu's presentation, if you took the presentation away, you'd have, what would you have? Not much of a movie, I don't think. I think the presentation elevates it. And the meta-ness puts it over the top for me. On top of, it's maybe the only movie where I actually believe the performance of what's his name, the comedian Zach Galifianakis.
He's in that movie.
Like I can actually forget that that's Zach Galifianakis as kind of
interesting.
I think he's like the stage producer or the handler for him.
Okay,
I don't know, because he helps negotiate Edward Norton being the replacement for the like second actor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the cast is kind of amazing. It's been a while since you've seen this movie, right? Do you remember who's in it?
Emma Stone's in it.
Right.
Ed Norton's in it.
Sure.
Michael Keaton.
Right. Zach Galifianakis.
Those are the three I remember. Apparently, Zach Galifianakis is in it too.
Sure. Amy Ryan's in the movie, and so is Naomi Watts. You completely forgot about them.
Is Naomi Watts in the play also?
Mm-hmm.
Is Amy Ryan in the play, or is she not part of the play?
Not part of the play.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not sure this would hit as hard like in 1989 had I seen Birdman. I don't think it would have hit as hard as somebody who grew up watching Keaton.
Right. Yes.
And having an attachment to movies like Batman and really like his career. You know what I mean? Like I enjoyed Keaton as a young person, watching Batman, watching Beetlejuice, watching a couple other things. Like he was an actor in my life, I would say. And then he went away for a while, and Birdman was like in that world of time where he came back. And this movie was like clearly referencing his life or his career.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Without actually referencing it. And I kind of felt like for the first time that there's more to Michael Keaton than what I thought there was. Yeah. Like the fact that he agreed to play this role that kind of makes fun of him, but also he does it in a way that makes it artistic and interesting. A lot of that was the director, but he trusted the director to like do
right
that
to
with
take
him.
in that direction. Yep.
And so I think it's I think in a career of interesting choices, not all successful, I think Birdman's probably his most interesting. That's why it's my number one.
That's a good number one. And I that's interesting to talk about his career, because I'm kind of looking at his credits here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you see probably his last big one in the 90s was Jack Frost, 98, right? Where he plays a snowman.
That bombed hard.
That bombed hard. And then I'm looking, and it's like Shot at Glory, Quicksand, Live from Baghdad, First Daughter.
Lots of movies people haven't seen.
Exactly. Herbie Fully Loaded. You know, that's you're in career hell to be in that movie.
Sure.
I guess he does do a voice in Cars, but you know,
I mean, those movies made money.
Yeah, but then really it was like Toy Story 3, The Other Guys, RoboCop, Birdman, Need for Speed, like you know, like and then Spotlights and The Founder. So yeah, if it's like something happens in like 2013.
Yeah.
And he just sort of rebounded. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, even his comeback in like the mid 2010s, you have those movies like Need for Speed mixed in where you're like,
exactly.
And RoboCop, which I didn't dislike RoboCop, but it did bomb whether I liked it or not. And so there's definitely like high points and low points, even in the resurgence of Michael Keaton, for sure.
And like after Spider-Man Homecoming, he has American Assassin.
Right. Which is not
right, and Dumbo, and then Worth and Chicago 7. So it right, it's not like he's been all hits ever since, but
No.
he's definitely relevant again.
Yeah. Although I would say, short of maybe Beetlejuice, Birdman was the last time he was the guy. Maybe Founder, but Founder was not as high profile as Birdman.
No.
Anyway. All right, that was our list of our top 10 favorite films starring Michael Keaton. Thank you for joining us for this episode 649 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there and subscribe. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that as well, 5 stars only. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You could also find us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter, Blue Sky, or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
We will be back next week with something or other, probably with
Who knows?
Zach. We don't know exactly what it is. There's not a whole lot coming out next week that we really have to go see. So maybe we'll just come up with a random list. But we'll see what we end up with. Either way, we'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.